Hello, hello, hello. I want to talk about cannabis and drugs and can they have effect on our current culture? Current culture. Okay. So I want to look at a couple of videos real quick. And as we look at these videos, we'll come back and make us a commentary on them. And so let's get started looking at these videos.
Here's the story with cannabis. As you point out, it's going to be the ratio of THC to CBD that's important. Smoking or vaping anything is bad, nicotine or cannabis, or worse for you than edible or tincture. High THC concentration of cannabis is dangerous for the following reason. But first of all, it does have therapeutic applications for glaucoma, pain management, maybe even some mental health effects, ability to help certain people focus at low dose. But for, in particular, young males in their early teens, and 20s who take high THC containing cannabis, there is a much greater, like 4x increase in probability of psychotic episodes later that don't ever reverse. It is clear that cannabis has therapeutic benefits, but very high potency THC cannabis can be a problem. At the dosage you described, 2.5 milligrams, very unlikely to be a problem. The pure CBD cannabis is interesting too. So-called Charlotte's Web is a powerful anti-epileptic. In fact, parents of epileptic kids move to Colorado just so they can get Charlotte's Web CBD cannabis. So it's really the percentage of THC relative to CBD that's important, the age of the user, whether or not there's a predisposition of psychosis. Here's the story.
All right. So, all right, y'all heard that. Y'all seen that. Okay, as the doctor was talking about how cannabis can affect you, especially the earlier you take it. Okay, and I bring this up because there's various drugs laws across the nation, and I'm a personal belief that the government need to get out of the drug business. And some people say, well, they should legalize drugs. Well, if we're going to look at that and see some of the consequences of government legalizing various various drugs. Okay, so we're going to talk about that. Okay, so and I want to pay close attention. I'm going to use three cities. I'm going to use Portland, Oregon, Oakland, California, and Denver, Colorado. Now you notice I use those three particular cities because if you have paid attention, they've been in the news lately a lot. Now, as you know, Portland, Oregon is known for demonstrations. Have nothing against demonstrations. People should demonstrate if they want to believe something. But I kind of wonder about that whole situation in Portland, Oregon. Just for your facts, of course, cannabis is legal in Portland, but also uh, Portland has this thing about drugs. They go from decriminalizing drugs back to criminalizing drugs. They've been going back and forth over the series of years. And in September of last year, they decided to go back to criminalizing hard drugs. Yes, hard drugs were not criminalized in Oregon. And what happened was they wind up having a whole bunch of overdose. Yeah, bunch of overdoses. And another thing about Oregon, and this is what I really found interesting, you know, LSD is basically what happens with LSD. We talk about meth and LSD. Typically, you only get $100 fine if you're caught in possession of those drugs. And in Portland, in particular, they don't even enforce LSD. They just let you go around taking LSD. Can you imagine those folks on LSD? I personally think that's what the problem is in Portland. All those folks up there on LSD and on mushrooms, they be tripping. Now, by the way, I'm not trying to be a hypocrite about all this, because let me tell you something about my background. I smoked marijuana for about a dozen years. Okay, took all those pills, the reds, the blues, the yellow jackets, the Darvons. You know, I took all those and Quaaludes. I dropped the LSD, the mescaline, window pane and purple microdot, and all blotter acid. I did all that stuff. Smoked a little coke, snort some heroin. Now, why am I telling you all this? Well, I've been drug free since 1988. Drug free, alcohol free. Don't drink, don't smoke. Okay, and so I know a little bit about that culture. Okay, I know a little bit about it, and I remember that culture. I remember the first time I dropped some LSD. And there's a video out with Richard Pryor, and there's a clean version. It's on. I wish it was on YouTube. I was trying to find it on YouTube so I could show it to you because it is hilarious. But the clean version's on what you call daily. I think it's daily motion. Daily motion. I was trying to find it on YouTube. Has it? They have the dirty version. I like the clean version better because when you don't have, when you ain't doing all that cussing, you have to work more at being funny, and it is funny. Okay, but that whole video is true. You take that stuff and it just alters your whole world. I'm talking about LSD. And the mushrooms are the same way. It alters your whole world, your whole way you're thinking. It is a hallucinogenic. It messes you up. So I got this feeling. This is just me. That was people in Portland, Oregon. And some of y'all from Portland might get upset at me, but y'all probably know this is true. Y'all run around taking LSD and eating mushrooms. That's why you're out there. That's why y'all taking over city blocks and all that kind of stuff. That's why they're doing it. That's my feeling. Okay. There's another thing. And so that's Portland, Oregon. Then let's talk about another place, Oakland, California. I am originally from California. Okay. And again, cannabis is illegal. It's legal in California. And their rules basically is all other drugs, the heroin, LSD, the meth, is illegal. And you could get up to a $1,000 fine and a year in jail. But cannabis is legal. Okay. Then you got Denver, Colorado. Okay. Now I'm going to come back to all this. I'm going to come back to California. And you got Denver, Colorado. Also in the news a lot lately. Cannabis is also legal, right? But most other drugs are divided by the amount of your possession, okay? Whatever you caught with, based on the amount of grams you had, depends upon whether you're going to get a fine, whether it's a felony, or whether it's a misdemeanor, based on that, okay? So that's how but all three of those states, and there's other states that cannabis is legal. But here's the problem. And this is kind of with the guy. There's another video out there that he was trying to allude to. The cannabis we have now in 2025 is much more lethal. That cannabis I was smoking back in the, because I'm an old guy, by the way, but cannabis I was smoking in the 70s, 80s, when we had all these different names from, they still got names on the cannabis. I know y'all go to the cannabis store and they have the different names and everything. And so what happens is that cannabis that we were smoking in the 70s and 80s was anywhere from 3 to 4% THC content, right? That I'm talking about the weed. Nowadays, the THC content is up to about 20%. Y'all feel me? It's 20%. It's 5 times stronger. And we wonder why people are losing their mind. That's what's happening. They're smoking weed 5 times stronger. Like the doctor said, you get that stuff too early, it has a psychotic effect on you. This is why our children, now we have all these diseases, and our children are being bipolar and paranoid, schizophrenic. I'm telling you, you smoke that stuff. And I remember when I smoked it, man, I'm walking around. Like right now, I got glasses. I'll be, hey, where my glasses at? Glasses on my face. Hey, where my hat at? I'm hat on my head. Where's my keys? I'm holding my keys in my hands. Because that's what it does to you, right? It messes you up. And I got a strong feeling. Now, I don't have answers. I'm just saying what I think is going on in our society with people right now. We smoking all that government weed. That's what's going on. Yeah, that's what I call it. I call it government weed. Let me tell you what's happening. And y'all might say, well, Terry, the government is allowing us to do it so much. No, the government don't care if you smoke the weed or not. You know what the government cares about? Tax dollars. That's what the government cares about. They're getting tax dollars off that government weed. And what it has done, the price of weed has went up. It used to, we used to know that we could get a big old bag of weed like that for about $20. Can you get that now? I guarantee you potheads out there know I'm telling the truth. You're getting these little tubes of weed for $25, $30 because the government got involved. The government has messed the weed up. And you saying, how they messed the weed up, Terry? Well, this is what happened. There was a documentary on, I want to say it was on YouTube. It might have been on YouTube. I'd have to go look again. But there's a documentary, or it might have been on Netflix. This is one of the Netflix, YouTube, Hulu, but it's one of those shows where they were talking about what's going on in the weed industry. Well, what happened is you got different sides to the weed industry. You got what the government's doing. You got what the growers are doing. And then you got what the growers are not telling the government. Example, What the government did, they got involved. So they legalized. I'm going to use California for example. And what happened was they went to California and they designated, I want to say 3 areas where they grow weed at. So they grow this weed. And so as they're growing, the growers grow the weed. And then what happens, the government sent in whatever you call a plant scientist. The plant scientists came in and they start helping the growers grow the weed. And so what they do, they grow a crop, take it back to lab, analyze it for the THC content. Then they'd go back and forth and they'd mix the weeds and just kind of something. They came up with these names. Well, what happened in all that? They made the weed stronger. It is now 5 times stronger than the weed we were smoking in the 70s, 80s. Government weed. And so people smoking this government weed, and it's much more potent. And so that's why you got people standing out here. You got the homeless people standing out here with signs saying, money, weed, or food. They really don't want no food. They just want either weed or money. I seen them. They be out here saying that. That's why we're smoking this government weed and we losing our mind. This is what happened. That's why people going crazy. Look at Oakland. Let's pick on Oakland. I'm from San Francisco Bay Area. But in Oakland, they don't enforce those laws. And you go out to Oakland, it is like the Wild Wild West. The police chief, who only been there 18 months, he just resigned. The mayor got indicted. Okay, now they got a new mayor, Barbara Boxer. That's her name, Barbara Boxer. She's similar to Mayor Glass out of LA. They run in the same circles, you know. But Barbara Boxer is now the the mayor of Oakland. Oakland got problems, right? They don't enforce those laws out there. Those people doing whatever they want to do. You know, you go out to Oakland, you want. But it's like chaos there. So now the president's talking about going to Portland, and they're fighting it. They got all that chaos out in Portland, right? Because everybody out there high. That's what's going on in Portland. Denver's no different. They out there high in Denver too. Only difference, I'll give Denver credit. I like how they penalize per gram. Now, I know California and Oregon, they focus on rehabilitation. But let me be honest with you. Sometimes you got to give people a little bit more incentive than just rehabilitation, because people they'll go in and out those alcohol and drug facilities until they they're still doing some jail time, right? That gets their attention. I'm just saying, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just saying, I know that culture. Now, this is another thing that they're not telling everybody. Because they're legalized marijuana and that the government's coming in and taxing the money, right? What do you think the growers are doing? The growers are taking that marijuana that they're growing and they selling it on a black market. And so you got people, these trucks driving across the country, grabbing that government weed, which is much more potent than the weed they can get anywhere else, because the U.S. government or the California government, whatever government, has made the weed potenter. And so they driving across the nation in trucks and caravans, grabbing that weed, taking it back to the East Coast and selling it at outrageous prices, because it's that government weed, and we're smoking that stuff. And now we got more mental health problems than there is. You know what? RFK need to look into that. You know, he looking into everything else. He need to look into this government weed program going around in the country, because it's messing us up. That's what it's doing. Messing us up. I have a good one. Thank you.